bases are full. Nettles with a great play to dial to get the run and save 2 rounds. Radical square by Graig Nettles, the Yankee third baseman, who's making a believer of even Tom Seaver. He is absolutely fabulous.
I don't believe it. What he has done in the last 2 days, it's unbelievable.
There have been only 16 captains in the history of the Yankees franchise. Some of the all-time greats of the game. Some were people of the highest quality, the type of man that you'd want your daughter to marry. And some were not. Graig Nettles was the 11th man to hold this honor. He was a defensive wizard at third base. He amassed a career 68 WAR, 390 home runs, 2,225 hits, and 1,193 runs over his 22-year career. He was twice voted in the top 10 for MVP, a 6-time All-Star, back-to-back World Series champion in 1977 and 78, and named the ALCS MVP in 1981. Graig was not without some controversy in his career. In a game on September 7, 1974, at the old Tiger Stadium, he hit a home run, and on the next at-bat, he broke his bat on a single. Detroit catcher Bill Freehan picked up the pieces of the bat and the half-dozen rubber super balls that bounced out of the core when the bat exploded. Nettles claimed that the bat was given to him and he had no knowledge of it being doctored. In 1984, Nettles authored a book the year after being traded to the Padres. The book focused on the 1983 season and his many frustrations playing for George Steinbrenner and Billy Martin. The book was highly controversial, and it was published while he was actively playing. Some reviews described the book as a 200-page rant. But, then again, Billy Martin could drive pretty much anyone to a breaking point. But Graig Nettles was not a guy you could easily push around. As we'll see later, he wasn't afraid to get physical. He played hard. He wasn't afraid to get dirty, was not afraid to break up double plays or barrel into catchers. All the while, playing the hot corner and averaging 157 games played per year from 1970 through 78. That's durability personified. Today I'm joined by Graig Miller from Midlife Sports Cards. If you're into the baseball card hobby, I'm sure you know Graig. He produces one of the preeminent vintage card channels on YouTube. I knew Graig was a Nettles fan. He has some personal stories and memorabilia that I think you'll really enjoy. I think about a year ago, or maybe even longer ago, I was watching one of your videos and you mentioned that you were a Graig Nettles fan, in part because you had the same spelling of the first name. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was funny because when I got into the hobby originally when I was a kid, I was a big Jim Rice fan. And for the reason was I was my T-ball team was the Red Sox, and I was randomly assigned number 14. So I just became a huge Jim Rice fan for no other reason than that. But can you share a little bit about how that evolution took place and why Graig Nettles?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say that I had a similar thing with Roger Clemens. I was on the Red Sox when I was 9 in Little League, and I was a pitcher. And that would have been like 1987, 88 when Clemens was pretty dominant. So I became a big Clemens fan from that. So my dad was a huge Yankee fan all the way growing up from the time he was little. And I think part of that was, I think it was CBS owned the Yankees. And so the game of the week was usually the Yankees. So sort of like, in my generation, there are a lot of Cubs and Braves fans because they could see them on TV before we all had the MLB packages and stuff. Mm-hmm. He became a Yankee fan. And, we have the last name of Miller. And my dad's name is Michael Miller. And it's just like you look up in the local phone book and there's 20 Michael Millers. And so he wanted to have some sort of, and my mom, same thing, wanted to have some sort of uniqueness to our names. And so my brother got a unique middle name. And then for me, they liked the name Graig. And I was born in 1979. And this is, the Yankees were a pretty good team in the late 70s. And he had a lot of his highlights in the World Series and in the playoffs defensively. Graig Nettles did. And so they're like, we like the name Graig, but to add a uniqueness to it, maybe we should name it after Graig Nettles, Graig. So it isn't Greg Miller. It's something unique to it. And so I was basically raised as a Yankee fan, and it was sort of like I had this connection to Graig Nettles, and my parents encouraged that for sure. Like, when I would open packs as a kid, it was like I remember pulling Graig Nettles 1987 Topps cards on the Padres, and that was like a hit for me because that was my guy. And you had asked me to maybe grab a few items that were special, and one kind of goes with this perfectly, so I'll show it now. This is probably my most special Graig Nettles item. But my parents put me in Yankee gear as a young kid and Yankee hats and stuff, and so this is back in the days of Polaroid photos. And so there were a bunch of Polaroid photos of me in Yankee shirts and hats. And so I was probably about 3 years old, and my parents went to an A's game because we grew up in Northern California. And so they went to an A's Yankees game. And at the A's Yankees game, my mom brought this Polaroid of me. And during the game, like in the middle of the game, in the middle of an inning, when the Yankees were up to bat, my mom goes down to the dugout and she leans over the railing and she says, "I need to talk to Graig Nettles." And
Wow.
and the guy's like, what are you talking about? She's like, "I need to talk to Graig Nettles." And so they see this young gal, my mom's a pretty lady. So they get Graig Nettles, and he kind of pokes his head out and is like, and she goes, "We named my son Graig after you and the spelling of your name. Will you sign this photo?" And so this photo is
Oh
a
my gosh.
Polaroid
Let me
of
get
me.
isolate that. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. There we go.
And it says, "To Graig, Graig, best wishes, Graig Nettles." And so that is about 3-year-old Graig. And she got that signed during an A's Yankees game in Oakland.
Man.
And so then you grow up and you have a picture like that, and it's like, that's just sort of, it's
Yeah.
just the thing. And then I became I started playing baseball. I was an infielder. I played a lot of shortstop, but I also played second base and third base.
Mhm.
And so it's just kind of the natural thing that I became, that I've always been a Graig Nettles guy, always.
I know that Graig is from Southern California. I think he's from San Diego, right? And I think he played at San Diego State. You're in Sacramento, which, to somebody way out here in Georgia, I think, okay, that's still California. But then you look on a map and it's like, I mean, you may as well be in Kentucky compared to Georgia.
Right.
So were you a Padres fan at all? Did you follow
Not
him
a
at all?
Padres fan. That's about 8.5, 9 hours drive from where I
Crazy.
am. Yeah, which is crazy. I don't recall that World Series. I was born in '79, so I was 5.
Okay.
So I do remember the tail end of Nettles' career with the Padres, and but for me, it was always about Graig Nettles, the Yankee, and the
Yep.
Yankee captain. And being a Yankee captain was a big deal. My dad was a huge Thurman Munson fan.
Yep.
They have a lot of gaps in the years where they didn't have a Yankee captain. And one of those gaps is before Thurman Munson.
That's right.
And then they went to dual captains. They had Guidry and Willie Randolph, where the only time there was a co-captain. And then the next guy was Nettles before Don Mattingly. So that was always sort of a special thing, and it turned into part of my collection. Is now I collect Yankee captains because it was always Graig Nettles, captain of the Yankees, was the thing, and then before Jeter there was a gap. So there were many, many years growing up as a baseball fan where the Yankees didn't have a captain, but Nettles was one. So that was sort of a special thing. And then my my niece is named Mattingly after Don Mattingly, and who was the Yankee captain after Graig Nettles. So, but
Wow.
no, not a Padres fan. Not a ton of recollection of Nettles playing, but a lot of watching, highlights, specifically defensively. Even though he almost hit 400 home runs, I think he had 390. Home run hitter, but his main expertise was defense, is what he was best known for.
On the list of third basemen not named Alex Rodriguez, Nettles is at the top of WAR for guys not in the Hall of Fame. Fangraphs has his defense at third as the best in the league for the decade of the 1970s, ahead of Hall of Famers Brooks Robinson, Mike Schmidt, and George Brett. I mentioned at the start that Nettles wrote a book called Balls in 1984. I asked Graig if he had ever read the book and what his thoughts on it were.
Interestingly, I have read the book. It's been quite a few years. My grandparents bought me that book when I was about 10, and they were very proud of the fact that they were able to locate a first edition of the book. And I haven't read it in a long time, but I do still have it. It's in my kind of tote that has a lot of photos and stuff. It's not signed. I have a lot of signed Nettles stuff. That's not signed. And in the book, he mentions that people have come up to him and said, we named our kid Graig, spelled Graig because of him. He mentions that. Interestingly, there were a lot of people battled Steinbrenner during that era. I mean, Dave Winfield, obviously, Billy Martin, that was a stretch where Steinbrenner was definitely he was definitely in a power struggle at all times, and wanted to make sure he knew everyone knew that he was in charge.
A lot of people think Billy and I argue all the time. Actually, we agree on just about everything, right, Bill?
You betcha, George.
We even drink the same beer.
Light beer from Miller's. Light's got a third less calories than the regular beer, and it's less filling.
And the best thing is it tastes so great.
No, George, the best thing is less filling.
No, Bill, it tastes great.
Less filling, George.
Billy, it tastes great.
Less filling, George.
Billy?
Yeah, George.
You're fired.
Oh, not again.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
But, I met George Steinbrenner in 2002. I went to Yankee spring training in Tampa, and my brother somehow figured out that at the Radisson Hotel was the hotel. It was the team hotel, and we didn't really know what that meant, but we booked a room at the Radisson in Tampa Bay in Florida. And one night we were at dinner. In fact, I'll tell that story in a second, but one night we're at dinner in the restaurant down on the first floor. They had a in-house restaurant, and we were eating in a booth, and it was sort of a circle, like a U-shaped booth. And in the middle of our dinner, in walks George Steinbrenner and his wife, and they sit at the booth right next to us. So my back is facing my dad and then my brother, and directly behind me in the booth is George Steinbrenner. And I'm like, this is crazy. We're like, this is crazy. This is George Steinbrenner, and you hear all these stories, and he had some suspensions, and there was all this stuff. And I had been putting together a team ball of the Yankees that spring training, and it was up in my room because we just went down to dinner. We dropped our stuff, went down to dinner. I went up to my room. I was like, I'm going to be right back. I got in an elevator. I went up, and I got that team ball.
Good for you.
And I brought it back down, and I'm like, I'm going to ask him to sign it. My dad's like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And so I got out the ball, and I was kind of turned in my seat and kind of pivoted around. And I said, I hate to interrupt you, Mr. Steinbrenner, but I've got this team ball signed by the Yankees, and it wouldn't be complete unless your signature was on it too. And he said, oh, wow, yeah, let's take a look. And he's like, oh yeah, you got a lot of guys on there. And he said, he's like, where do you want me to sign? And I go, would you sign on the sweet spot? Now, the sweet spot already had Joe Torre's name on it.
Oh.
And he said, and this really stuck out to me. What he said is, he goes, "Oh, well, I like to leave the sweet spot for Joe.
Oh,
So why don't I sign somewhere else?" And I said, "Well, then why don't you kind of sign just off the sweet spot next to Joe?" And he goes, "Okay." And so he signed it, and the pen kind of caught, like the start of his G, the pen hadn't fully caught yet. So the start of the G it's a little rough, but the rest of it came out well. And that really struck something to me, because it was like he was always in this power struggle with Billy Martin about power and who's really running the team. But here he is now saying, "Oh, well, Joe should be on the sweet spot." And that was a moment that it shown that to me, Steinbrenner had really kind of evolved in that power struggle that he used to be in. And then some other people came up to him later and introduced themselves, and they said, "Hey, we don't have tickets for tomorrow's game. We came in, we were in town, we wanted to go to a game." And he's like, "Well, what are your names?" And they said their names. And he goes, "Well, I'm going to leave your name at the box office, and I'm going to have you come up and sit in my booth with me."
Wow.
And so, that was my experience with George Steinbrenner. And so I know he went through kind of a stretch where he was a little bit, difficult for some people.
Don't we all?
But as he aged, he became a different guy. And I think that Graig Nettles, Graig Nettles was a little bit difficult with the press, and difficult with, he got in fights on the field at times with George Brett. And
okay, Greg brought it up, so I have to show it. The fight between George Brett and Graig Nettles is pretty well known, but nevertheless, how can we have a video about Graig Nettles and not show this?
Brett went in hard, and both teams are out on the field. Brett went in hard at Nettles, and Nettles kicked him, and that's when the fight started. Billy Martin right in the middle trying to break it up.
Now we're going to get another look at that play. Let's watch it closely. Now Blair comes over. Good backing up. Now here's where it is at third. The Nettles didn't do anything, and oh, there he did. Yep, he kicked him.
After Brett went into him, Nettles kicked him, and here it goes here. And right in the middle of his Guidry.
Yep.
I tell you, Nettles the wrong guy to fight with, I think.
Oh, man. Hiller's trying to hold him. He can't do it.
Chambliss over there, too.
Munson.
There's George Z.
It might help to understand the context here, too. Tempers were hot in this series. The game before this, the Royals' Hal McRae went hard into second base to break up a double play.
He's at the belt. 1-2 pitch to Brett. Curveball bounced to Nettles at third, to second for one, and McRae takes, and now Patek is going to try to score, and he will score. And the ball game is tied. McRae knocked Randolph down, threw a rolling block on him, and while Randolph was on the ground, Patek scored from third base. And the ball game is tied 1-1.
Then Nettles did the same, throwing his shoulder and making really no attempt to slide into second.
And he pulls one to third. They'll go for the double play. Out at second. Out at first. No, save at first as Mayberry lost the ball. Throw was there in time, but Munson is safe with a run batted in.
And Nettles went in and got Frank White here. Watch Graig. Come on. He does what McRae did. Goes right after him.
Number 44.
Right there, Graig Nettles with the block, and that made the runner safe at first base. Good play by Nettles.
The thing that cracks me up about that quick little brawl is that nobody got ejected from that.
I know, isn't that nuts?
Brett came in hard and then pushed Graig, with his elbow a little bit, and Graig kind of hit him in the mouth with his foot. Brett comes up swinging.
Yeah.
Bench is clear. Nobody's ejected.
Yeah.
So
definitely different. And Brett even said, I mean, I've seen several interviews with them about it, and Brett's like, he and I are good friends. We were good friends when that happened, but it's different. You're on the field, you're doing your thing, and
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure they were in all-star games together, and so they spent time together and stuff. So, yeah, it's pretty funny that nobody got ejected.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think his brash personality and stuff, though maybe it caused some conflict with people like Steinbrenner and some other top players, I think that's probably one of the things that they liked about him being a leader, is that he was kind of, you know, tough, and he was not going to take crap from anybody. And so I think that was probably something that they saw in him. And then I know for a fact that they you know, got along later, because at that spring training, Graig Nettles was there, and he was working with third baseman. In fact, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember for sure, but I think that might have been the year that A-Rod came to the Yankees. And A-Rod was switching from shortstop to third base, but he was working with the third baseman, and I want to say one of them was A-Rod, as he was making that transition, and he was working with the team, and he was in a break where he had just worked with guys defensively and positioning and angles and things, and I was watching him from the backstop, and he came over to collect some balls, and I said hello, and I told him about my name and stuff, and he was nice, you know, he was nice, but he was definitely kind of a tough guy, and you know, you need those on your team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's my experience with Steinbrenner, and then that. So I know they got along later, just like him and Yogi. I mean, Steinbrenner and Yogi were in a long time, you know, issue, and then they made up at the end too.
Yeah, I saw that Yogi documentary on Netflix. I didn't know any of that beforehand. That they, you know, were kind of estranged for a little while. But yeah, I love that story, because oftentimes you only hear the worst of people, and the way that Steinbrenner, I think the way that you phrased it when you asked him to sign the ball, the fact that it wouldn't be complete without his signature, went a long way. But I can't imagine seeing the owner and approaching him and asking him for tickets. That would be a little much.
Well, they didn't ask.
Oh, okay.
They came up and they said, hey, we just want to introduce yourself. Sorry to interrupt. Huge fan of the Yankees. And he said, well, are you going to a game? And they said,
oh,
no, we couldn't get tickets. It's sold out, but we
okay.
tried. We wanted to. And that's when he asked for their names.
Gotcha.
And he said he'd leave their names at the box office. And I mean, that's an incredible gesture, you know,
Yeah.
on his end. To these strangers are going to now sit with him in his box for the whole game. I mean, it left an impression for sure. I mean, because again, you always hear these things like, if you're battling with Yogi, and you're battling with Winfield, and you're battling with, you know, Billy Martin, you're battling with all these guys, you kind of start to think, well, what's going on? But he definitely mellowed toward the end. But when I think of highlights of Nettles, and I'll show you another item here. Now, I got several, so if there's anything you want to see, I can show you. But I think of them defensively, and a lot of the defensive highlights were in the biggest moments in the World Series and stuff. And so a friend of mine bought this for me recently. So this is a type 1 photo. This is a type 1 photo that's also autographed. And this is from the 1981 World Series. And beautiful. He is snagging basically stealing a hit from Steve Garvey. And it was in game 1 of the World Series, and they were in the middle of a rally, and Graig Nettles makes this play, and the Yankees end up winning game 1.
John Stone at first, and here's Steve Garvey. Now on Garvey.
Tommy's coming alive. He senses maybe the Thought to be impossible could happen.
Garvey alone. What a play by Nettles at third base. I've never seen such a burglar.
He really is, isn't he? Oh, did Garvey get that pitch?
Well, this ball is really hit.
Oh.
And they always said that third base was reaction type of position. Don't see too many better plays than that.
Whoa. Well, he had a great hand in beating the Dodgers with defensive play in '78, particularly Game 3, if you remember. The crowd is standing for Nettles' play.
Not only that, how it must haunt Lasorda. He must think he's turned the calendar back 3 years.
And so again, it's a type 1 photo, but it's also autographed and JSA certified. And so when you talk about Graig Nettles highlights, again, I mean, he struck out a lot, but he had almost 400 home runs, and there aren't a lot of guys who have 400 home runs who aren't in the Hall of Fame, you know, and there are a few, but not many. And so he was 10 short of 400, but he's probably his biggest highlights would all be defensively. And so that's what makes an item like that super special, is that it really shows that part of his game, which is what I think of as with some of his highlights. And here's another item. This actually turned out to be kind of a special item too. So this is Sports Illustrated, and it's got him and Goose Gossage, and this was from that '84 season. This is April, so early in that '84 season, and it's signed in gold pen by Graig Nettles. And the thing that's kind of cool about this is I have a daughter named Lucy, and her nickname is Goose. And so this the title on this Sports Illustrated is Graig and the Goose.
Oh yeah,
and
awesome.
and that's pretty cool. And this was given to me from a friend viewer of the channel who lives in Las Vegas, who I believe he got that autograph in person, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I have lots of. No, I could show you a couple more things. While
you got to get Goose Gossage to sign.
I know. I've thought about it, and he signs. I have a fun Goose Gossage story. He lives in Colorado Springs, and a good friend of mine lives in Colorado Springs, and they ran into him at a bar, and they end up, the three of them, my buddy, his friend, and then Goose Gossage, end up back at Goose Gossage's house, and Goose Gossage ends up giving my friend a game-used minor league jersey that he then signed.
What?
Yeah, quite a story. It's a story for another day. So then I have this payroll check of Nettles, and it's kind of cool because it tells you a story about what they were getting paid at the time. You know, not much. This was probably a weekly paycheck.
What's the date on
that? The date is February 15th, 1979.
Okay.
And it's for $58.97, so $6,000. So it's probably like a weekly paycheck, and maybe they must have been paid 12 months of the year, since it's in February. But then it's endorsed on the back by Graig Nettles. So I bought this. I've had this for probably, I don't know, I bet about that 25 years ago. And then my brother got this for me at a memorabilia show. So this is a ball signed by Nettles, and it says, "To Graig, best wishes, Graig Nettles," which again mirrors the "To Graig, best wishes, Graig Nettles" from the picture that my mom had done. So the ball is from my brother. He got this in about 2003 or so for me. And then the picture from my mom would have been probably about 80. I would guess it'd be about 1983, but same inscription as the other one. So those are some pretty cool items.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I just looked up, so it looked like in 1978, at least, his salary was $145,000, which is I can't even. I'd have to run that through some calculator to tell me what that is today. It doesn't sound like a lot of money for a.
Well, the minimum, I think, the league minimum right now, for like the minimum of a major league player, I think is $700,000 a year.
Yeah, crazy.
But obviously, guys make $50 million a year too. So here's another Nettles card that I'll show. So I have several Nettles rookie cards. I probably have I don't know, maybe 4 of them. And this one is this was given. It's signed. So the Nettles rookie card has an error. There's this loop right here, and that loop was just supposed to go along by the Twins.
Okay.
And so there's a loop error variation, and this is the loop error, and then it's signed by Nettles with his MLB debut date. This was given to me from a friend, Darren, of Return to Collecting is his channel name.
Yeah, I know him.
And I have a handful, but this is the one I display for my run of Yankee captains. On the wall, I have a case, and I have a run of all the Yankee captains, and I have a card of every Yankee captain, except I don't have a card of Babe Ruth, at least not playing days, or Lou Gehrig, but I have a card of every other Yankee captain. And so that's on the display there. And this is the card that I display for Nettles.
Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, of course. And I'm honored that you invited me on, and it was great to chat with you.
I'm grateful for Graig. He was very gracious with his time. We talked for about an hour, and I doubt that I could find a better person to chat with about Graig Nettles. And thank you for your time. Attention spans are shorter today than ever. The two of you who've made it this far deserve a pat on the back.